Nowadays, it doesn't take a genius to notice that GD is not what it once was on my channel. At one point in time, GD was all I ever did. Even earlier on in the year, a good 90% of my videos were GD related, and I was loving it. Now, however, not only has the number of non-GD videos on my channel spiked to nearly a 50-50 split, but the variety of content from my GD videos has decreased down to best of lists and G-News. Quite a lot of the abstract content types on my channel are at an end, with the exception of regular shows like G-News. I'm not finding a lot of time for my videos in general at the moment, but after I finish my job, I will return to regular content creation with a lot of time to build my profile as a documentary maker. I'm not going to quit all my GD series. For example, I think I still want to make Maps from Hell videos, but quite a lot of the theatrical one-off videos, the theory videos, the game history videos, they all stand to go. If anything, I imagine videos like the Queer one will be the prevailing thing. One GD series that I don't really think lived up to personally what I'd hoped for it was community commentary, mainly because I focused on big levels and famous events without boiling down to the more honest side of things I would have liked and that I had a view for in the beginning. And so today I will be presenting one final episode of community commentary, and I'm going to be rounding off my community contributions from the old controversial way I used to project them, with some no holds barred cold truths about this game in the future, and also my position in this community in the past. In this video we'll be covering RobTop and 2.2, we'll also be covering drama and why it's necessary, we'll also be covering my conduct over the years and the controversy I caused, and we'll also be covering a stance I hold on the Korean community nowadays in 2.1. Chiefly, this video comes with an enormous trigger warning. So let's start off with the big hitting issue that divides everyone, RobTop and his lack of effort to uphold the future of this game. Across my career in GD, I've always tried to advocate for this game surviving. This doesn't mean I've always been optimistic about it, but if you'd asked me whether I wanted this game to prevail or die at any point in time, I'd have said prevail. But for the first time, I no longer feel there is a way in which that can happen. I think it was always going to be a massive black flag and no turning back moment if the wait for 2.2 actually outlasted the wait for 2.1. I remember waiting for 2.1 back in 2016 and the waiting time seemed colossal. Now it's been almost 3.5 years and we've covered just 2.0 and 2.1. This is far too long to be healthy for a short-lived mobile game. Werim, Dustan, Poison and loads of other good friends of mine made a compelling video about the state of the game with solid grounded points, and it's been uploaded in a few places, so be sure to go and give that a watch for some context. Chiefly though, this game's glory days are gone and done, and they have been for some time. 2.2 doesn't even have the content behind it to prop up the dying hopes now. No challenge mode, no floating ball, no camera controls or even RPG system can save it. And whose fault is it? Well, it's completely, solely and undoubtedly RobTop's fault, and this is where one of my pet hates of the community comes into play. RobTop doesn't work nearly as much as he should on this game, yet he still gets fan support from people who don't fully understand the fortunate position RobTop is in because of us. Whenever RobTop has been fairly criticised, I've seen the same knee-jerk reaction, saying, oh, leave him alone, he's just one guy. Well, if he's just one guy with too much to do, hire some developers. I never used to think RobTop should hire a development team, but it took literally researching the outcomes and following the chain of events in this video to come up with the conclusion that it was actually justified and a doable idea. RobTop will not, however, because he's too stubborn for his own good for one, and he wants the whole pie to himself. I know it's not a well-known fact, but RobTop is an extremely wealthy man with a vested interest in maintaining all of the rights, shares and assets to GD in order to profit to the maximum. RobTop has millions. I've never been to his house, but thanks to some Mika's leaks a couple of years ago, we know that not only is his house a very well-to-do residence, but he has multiple cars, one being a very nice Range Rover. And why shouldn't he? He's created a profitable game and is succeeding, and that's totally fine. However, this means that when stupid people spurt out the same age-old "he has to make money somehow" excuse, their argument becomes completely invalid. He has more than enough money to justify the stupid things he does while he's not working on the game. So much so that he doesn't even have to work, he could literally just retire now. And it's not like he's overstretching himself either. The leaderboards bug still hasn't been fixed after over a year. Let me repeat that. It's been over 12 months since RobTop became aware of a glitch preventing the live star count to work, and he's not rectified this easily fixed bug from his end in over 365 days. With this taken into account, it's my personal opinion that he owes more time to this game than the probably biannual eyeballing he gives it currently, or he should at least be honest and clear that he's disinterested in working on it now. But he doesn't do this. He tries to have the best of both worlds, and he maintains this game pathetically and knows it. So rather than rectifying this, he simply overpromises new features and tries to cram in slapdash content into new updates to compensate. The end result? All of the updates are rushed and plagued with bugs, issues and easy exploits that take away from the momentous event that the release of an update has become. It isn't a healthy model, especially for a mobile game, which doesn't have nearly as much potential lifespan to burn through as a PC game. So what does he do to dress up a half-finished update near the end of the year? He releases a new minigame. I don't know how anyone can actually defend Sub-Zero and Geometry Dash World as good choices by the developer. I remember in my Sub-Zero Unfortunate Truth video, now almost a year old, where I said that it would be wildly disappointing. Well, people actually said I was wrong about my points on RobTop's laziness and cash grabbing attitude because Sub-Zero was a good game. I cannot believe we've reached a point of such desperation that barely acceptable, average-looking levels are now seen as gold dust from the primary developer of the game, just because they weren't the same as those 20-second abominations like we saw in World. Geometry Dash World was so surface level and so incomplete and badly made that it pulled the bar for Sub-Zero down to an embarrassingly low level, as Sub-Zero just managed to satisfy that painfully low expectation. Sub-Zero was the third garbage minigame in 3 holiday seasons, and all of these felt very rushed and are full to the brim with adverts and are never updated or maintained. I think Sub-Zero being updated again and having more levels added would have been a real indication that RobTop was learning and reinstating some integrity, but instead Sub-Zero is just another failed promise and disappointing, incomplete GD bootleg game in order to maximise in-game advertising profits, just like the other two, because he promised no in-game advertising on the full version, and he makes more money from the ads, and that's the simple truth. In my opinion, the major redeeming quality about RobTop in the early days was the fact that he didn't have an ego. Nowadays, the guy's incredibly full of himself, however. This was evidenced by a forum thread that came out about a year ago with Magosty, in which Magosty requested that RobTop release a debugging database for GD to be worked off of, not a million miles away from the intentions of Pavlu Kavan's ModLoader project. But instead of just saying no, RobTop couldn't leave it there. He insulted Magosty, saying that he had no life, and yet he wonders why people are so keen to exploit his game and make him look a fool as a result. RobTop's attitude, among other things, seems to have been an issue, especially now he's minted and insanely rich. But it seems to me like it was an issue before as well. Based on his past conduct in streams and lack of respect for the streamer, as detailed by Serve well over a year ago, he genuinely seems like quite a naive and immature guy in my opinion. Maybe I'm going after him too hard here, but still, RobTop has the blindest, most indoctrinated fans in the entire community, partly due to the fact that he has the youngest audience. But if people still continue to try and attack and stamp down those who stand up to RobTop's complete disregard for the community and poor game management, you can bet your life that we'll be waiting well over another year for 2.2, just so Explorers can be disappointing as anything and the rest of the update be riddled with bugs. We've seen this twice now as well. Long updates contribute towards an extremely toxic community as things stagnate and the game can't progress. Contrary to what you might believe, my favourite time in this game was not 1.9. Although I do believe it was the best days of the game's life, they weren't my personal favourites. My fondest days in the community were between February and June 2017. Back then, 2.1 had been out for a few months, so it had enough time to manifest and mature a bit, but it was still young enough that the new and wildly exciting things were being produced all over the place. Hypersonic and Subsonic were two of them. We had Bold Step ready to release Erebus. Artificial Ascent had only been around for a few months and already they were working on a great sequel. God Eater was on the horizon, as was Black Blizzard. The Star Grinders and big players were burning through levels and quests. It had the rise of Wuxi as well. It had it all. There was no out-and-out drama besides a bit of montage controversy. Everybody was loving life, and we were so preoccupied with the new exciting opportunities that we forgot to sort of, fight in a sense. Level stealing is a huge problem I've noticed when people get bored. Look at every big level stealing drama. Bloodlust, Fusion Z, Innards, Low Death, they've all come from the stealer being tired of waiting for something. Now amplify that across an entire game of 5 million people or more, and you have a big fucking problem on your hands. Okay, enough about RobTop, as it isn't just him who is part of the problem. As a community, especially the creator community, I feel we are losing our way a bit. Why? One word: mega collabs. It's no secret that mega collabs were absolutely brilliant in 1.9. Starting with Supersonic and peaking with the Ultimate Phase, Bloodbath, right the way up to Yatagarasu at the end of 2.0, mega collabs were absolutely fundamental in carving the path we went down as a community. Now, however, the quality and the bar has slipped so much and been so oversaturated that they are actually invariably one of GD's worst types of deliverable, in my opinion. I don't want to keep lampooning this level, as I do feel bad for mentioning it for the second time, but Zodiac is the perfect example. I mean, it sounds harsh, but what is the point of this level? Zodiac was Rico LP's mega collab, but it seems to be about utilising the song Sphere by Creo for a GD level. As much as I like Creo, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Sphere has to be one of the worst songs for a GD level. Whereas in Dimension, the saxophone sounding part at the beginning really works with the build up and setting the atmosphere, and then the rest of the song actually contributes to a level structure, the same cannot be said for Zodiac. It's also on the side of being far too long to fit with its theme, another common mega collab problem. Audio issues aside, this level suffers from another common problem in mega collabs as well. The difficulty is extremely forced to cover for its shortcomings. Zodiac is ridiculously hard, but the gameplay is uninspiring, unoriginal, and just looks like what you'd expect to find in a generic mashup of Extreme Demon gameplay nowadays. As for the decoration, it suffers from poor coordination. The parts don't hang together very well from part to part. This is another regular issue with mega collabs. It suffers from overstaffing, and hence all the parts don't merge together very well. They might also have bad transitions and hence bad gameplay overall. I also find Zodiac's decoration to be just so generically 2.1 Extreme Demon style. Blocks, pulsing objects, flashing neon colours, just about timed with the music. It's just so meh. Zodiac rather reminds me of the GD level equivalent of a Tuesday. Some thought and cooperation would have gone a long way in resolving a lot of the problems here. For example, ever so slightly harmonising each part so it hangs together with the rest of the level, while of course retaining each part's individuality, like with Artificial Ascent, would have done bits. But the thing is, mega collabs push their own popularity, and so everyone just focuses on their own part for show. This is a serious problem I'm seeing not only ruin the potential of some mega collabs like Subterranean Animism, but the sheer number is starting to poison the well. There are so many mega collabs, including famous ones, which are boring, average, under par, disappointing, disorganised, or perhaps all of the above. The sheer number of projects is actually blighting the prospects of better levels. Edge of the Blade is a mega collab I happen to quite like, but it's got a fraction of the attention that it once would have got because of all the bigger ones, because it's just another mega collab among dozens to the community. Overstaffed and disorganised mega collabs can also lead to dragged out waiting times and even more problems beyond that. Fusion Z was needlessly kicked about until it became the subject of a level stealing drama. If we want progress, we need to streamline how we approach mega collabs, i.e. what purpose will they serve, why are we making it, and do we know the specific time constraints and teams so that we can keep the building efficient. Adhere to this and I guarantee you will see more Ultimate Phase caliber mega collabs in the future. You'll recall I did a best of list praising and ranking great solo levels, and I am planning to do one for mega collabs, although I might give it a bit of a while after this video, seeing as I just flamed them for 3 minutes. Solo levels aren't completely exempt from my concerns here either. I don't really have the same issues I do for mega collabs. My main concern for solo levels is bypassing the object limit and making them needlessly OP to try and be the best and most object heavy. Another unfortunate example here, Corn, or Con, I don't really know how you say it. Now, of course, I appreciate the effort that went into this level, but 1 million objects is beyond excessive and it's completely needless. The trend of object cramming in solo levels became a thing when people were in awe of the sheer amount in God Eater and Woodkid, but now we've misconstrued this to think that a higher object count equates to higher quality, which it doesn't. For all the hundreds of thousands of objects, when you boil it down, Corn actually looks pretty average. It looks like a mix of a Thanatos and Death Moon, but with the worst features of each level, and so the Death Moon parts are dragging it back to early to mid 2.0 in block design. I know it's just a game, but if you're going to invest this much time in a level, don't lose sight of your artistic aims of your project. This is what God Eater does well. Despite being a laggy mess, each part was formulated and had thought put into it, pulling from other games, different styles and speed builds. Corn just seems to wander aimlessly around in a half-assed attempt to be theatrical, to get it over the line of 1 million objects so it has a hook when it's previewed on someone's channel. Artistic misadventures aside, there is a more fundamental problem with the object limit bypassing in any given level: accessibility. Back in 2014, when this game was growing through its legendary days of 1.7 and 1.8 into the glory days of 1.9, the playing field was completely level. The Steam version wasn't even introduced until the end of the year, and before that, no matter what device you had, everyone had an equal playing field and fair shot to be good at the game and good at building. In 2.0, the 144Hz revolution happened, and mobile and 60Hz players began to fall behind in terms of skill. Now, they're dying a second death. Mobile players can't play the game for stars. They can't play the vast majority of Extreme Demons with a mid-range phone. Phone hardware is not keeping up with fast-moving graphical requirements of this game. 12, 13 and 14-year-old kids don't have S9s, iPhone XS's or Pixel 3s, and why should they need to? Why would you need the latest mobile phone worth nearly $1,000 to simply handle a game that costs anywhere between $2 to $4? The problem we face now, linking this back to the corn point, is that object-heavy masses of levels is what is attracting the fan support. God Eater, Woodkid, Ocular Miracle, all accessible to less than 10% of players, but are the three most hyped levels of the game. Besides a few players like Hilo, this is exactly what killed the mobile game a long time before the Everyplay shutdown. When Pekoski quit, that should have raised massive alarm bells for people, but we're already on an unchangeable path at this point. Good levels can stay within the object limit. Falling Up has less than 30,000 objects. It can be done. People just don't want to, as they'd rather add some massive piece of art that's a moving object and gobble up 5,000 objects per piece in the hope that it boosts their project's reputation. If GD is to survive, we need more lateral thinking towards gameplay and a less is more approach. Believe it or not, I'm not totally against Optical's idea of Levolution. I don't think he approached it in the correct way or phrased it at all well when he created it, but the idea of more simplistic yet creative, interesting levels is a necessary one, especially when all the big complex levels are usually delayed, falling through and too difficult to be verified or enjoyed. I've ranted quite a lot already, but now we come on to something a tad more personal to me. Now, you may have noticed in the past few months in my rants, I've alluded to being slightly socially conscious of what I say about someone's project, and this is something that has triggered me for a long time. Ever since 2016, I've been expected to act a certain way in this community, in spite of my true feelings or intentions, because what I say apparently has some sort of consequences for people. I think this would be a perfectly fair statement, were it not far-reaching as shit. Something that has always pissed me off is how people seem to refer to my quote-unquote fan base as if they are some wild mob of psychopathic animals. This became a particular problem earlier this year and has been an issue for me since 2016. In summer of 2016, I said that Mafui wouldn't verify Sonic Wave Rebirth in a comment chain, and I was berated by his friends and close group, i.e. the people who were behind the Queer project, who told me that I basically couldn't express public opinions on things because I made documentaries, and that people would take what I said too literally. This pissed me off, and followed me into my opinions on Bloodlust when I said that Quasar might give up on the level. Lo and behold, I was right about both situations, but it never went away. I'm not saying I've always acted as the most level-headed or rational person in the community, and I've made a lot of mistakes that I freely admit to, but I have repeatedly been told during my rant videos that I shouldn't criticise things or say anything bad because my fans would take it too literally and hate on the person or thing in question. All the while, I see other channels being extremely critical about whatever they like without fear of consequences. It is one of the things I'm quite bitter about in my GD career, in that I was expected to act a certain way, not by my fans, but by my critics, so I could appease people who can't even take legitimate criticism. Some people might be a bit confused by my issue here, so I'm going to throw in an example so you get a feel for it. Even though me and him are friends now and it's resolved and I apologised in the end for my handling of the situation, one instance of this that really annoyed me arose from my Woodkid video in 2017, in which I compared Woodkid to Orochi by Platnu. In this video, I called the original first version of Orochi boring, but the word I used was soulless because I thought it lacked a lot of depth or excitement as opposed to just being a very extreme demon. I spent the next day and a half arguing with Platnu, who told me he would be taking public action against me with edicts because it caused negative repercussions for his project, with a fan of mine allegedly calling Orochi soulless on one of his videos. As I said, I apologised to him in the end and we are completely cool now and much better friends, but at the time I was dumbfounded. Have you ever heard of someone having public action taken against them because they made a passing comment about the lesser of two levels? Could you imagine if somebody publicly called out someone like Werin every time he said something bad about Killbot? It shouldn't happen. Werin is one of my favourite channels and you should be allowed to criticise whatever you want in this community if you have reasonable grounds to. Levels and content included. But no, in this situation it seemed to place me in the wrong. After noticing this, it didn't go away, especially when I was growing really fast earlier on in the year. I feel I became quite restricted in what I could say, and the worst part was, during the Orochi situation, I didn't even expect anything to come of it. I had no malicious intentions when writing the script for that video. I didn't even remember writing the line in the script. It was a simple error of judgment that I wasn't even conscious of when I was doing it. I'm not denying that I may have been a little insensitive, but it's just a Geometry Dash level, and it looks way better now. The problem persisted, and by mid-year this year I used to upload videos late at night and go to sleep thinking, wow, I can't wait to see what the people of the GD forums thought was wrong with this video. A popular buzzword people like to use against me is fanbase, but again this is very overrated. My fanbase isn't toxic, nor is it out of order or any different to anyone else's in the communities. Just look at the comments of my GD videos and you'll see reasonable discussion, questions, compliments, loads of positive stuff. We are all just like-minded people who happen to agree on what is right and wrong. Yes, Cyrillic's channel got absolutely destroyed after my rant video on him by people you could call my fans, but as soon as that happened, people seemed to forget that he had falsely accused me of racism and then backstabbed me to get me to lower my guard, all while making fake DMs to incriminate me further. Just because someone's channel gets a lot of hate doesn't mean they didn't deserve it, as is the case with any content cop target. I think it's very evident that using my fanbase against me is more about a vendetta against me as opposed to legitimate concerns, and when you look at the small number of attempted rant videos on me and my fanbase, you realise that none of them actually hold any substance. A certain GD player did one a while back, and it's a classic example. This video was absolutely filled to the brim with false information and, though I hate to use the term, fake news, and him representing his opinions as solid fact, but the buzz phrase, "seize fanbase," appears every 30 seconds in his surface level criticism, so naturally it got loads of people agreeing by default in the comments about it. So much so that I'm not even being dramatic when I say that there's essentially a cult around demonising me through shaming people that supported me. Around March 2016, specifically in the video about Bloodlust and Plasma Pulse finale, I decided to take actions to stop unwanted backlash for other people, and so I addressed the fact that I know a large fan base can be quite pervasive, and to always maintain a level head and not to comment on any other videos after watching mine and forming an opinion. Was that enough? No, of course it wasn't. Instead, the next day I received screenshots from a GD community server where people basically said I had a big ego, I thought I controlled the community, etc, etc. Literally all because I tried to address their concerns in their interests. But of course, the names were blurred out when I got sent the DMs. You can love me or hate me, especially with my rant videos, but you've got to admit that I'm not afraid to speak out on sensitive issues publicly, and there are very few people in this community who will actually do that. It's always done behind backs, under fake accounts, on the privacy of Discord servers where names can be blurred. I get that we are all people on the internet, but nobody has any balls anymore. I'm obviously quite bitter about this whole situation, but that's just because it blighted my entire career, always wondering what the next argument was going to be about, just because I misplaced a word or I worded a sentence incorrectly in the view of someone who hates my guts. I always felt stuck between two eventualities. If I made videos with zero critical conscience, I would get hounded out for having too much power and too much sway in the community, because someone found a reason to be offended. Alternatively, if I addressed it and acted with a critical conscience, I'd be slammed for having a big ego on Twitter, Discord and the forums. I've never seen any other controversial GE player, not even Tosh, held to this kind of suffocating standard. I had, on more than one occasion, quite angry videos planned on this situation which would have completely exposed and destroyed quite a number of bigots who are actually quite popular in the community now, yet I never released them because I tried to walk away and be the bigger person. All this because of the precedent I set for myself in 2016 by being informative and trying to make good content, which came across as controlling and overly influential. It's a pretty fucked up situation that was exploited by multiple people who were trying to bring me down for sure. On a wider scale for this problem, something more channels get roped into was the will of the community to avoid drama. And this is something that has single-handedly deadened the community since mid 2.0. Basically, any sort of person arguing, any public criticism of someone, any confrontation of any sort is referred to as drama, and it's a feared buzzword around the community. I understand that level stealing, revealing personal information, raiding channels and servers and the like is all highly unnecessary and wrong, but it's gone too far the other way now, and the community is no longer allowed to stand up for what is right. The best example is the Noctafly situation last year. When Noctafly finally gave up his charade, those avidly defending him switched their tune from "he's legit" to "why does it matter that he hacked, it's just a game, stop creating drama." I honestly hate the word drama as used to describe feuds within GD. It's such a theatrical stretch of the imagination to suggest that we can't call out hackers or address tense situations, because the GD community is now the equivalent of the Safe Space episode of South Park. It's also an excuse to grab the moral high ground when you're losing an argument. More than once on Twitter, I've seen people start things they can't finish, and when they are fresh out of ideas, they use some sort of excuse like, "I'm not going to create any more drama," in order to brush off their ego as they retreat. Drama actually does have a role in keeping this game fresh and interesting. We don't all agree or get along in this community, and that's a good thing. I'll draw the line at when it stops being a joke, i.e. leaking personal info, harassment, raiding, death threats, and the like. But aside from that, GD Twitter was only ever interesting when two people were having it out over a certain inane topic. I don't want to sound like I'm supporting fights here, but seriously, there's nothing wrong with calling out Exum for stealing Fusion Z. There's nothing wrong with pointing out misplaced objects in Devil Vortex. There's nothing wrong with wondering why the player tasked with verifying the next hardest demon in the game has not streamed for over a year. Whether you are correct or incorrect, do your bit for what you believe is right, and not what is ineffective or the status quo. If you make a reasonable claim with reasonable suspicions which you have researched to support your conclusion, then worst comes to worst, you can throw your hands up in the air and admit that you were wrong and be no less reputable a person for having asked the question. Best case scenario, you'll actually hit the nail on the head and drive the change to make this community better. Something that has been absolutely key to this community's decline is the complete U-turn in progress that has been the Korean community. In 2014, 15 and 16, the Korean community was an absolute essential staple for the game. Sari, Neptune, Funny Games, Cyclic, Majako, Woogie, Koreaqua, Zenthic, Cosine and so many others are shining examples of how the Korean community contributed to the game. They used to be a source for innovation, mystery and a healthy dose of mild and easily rectified drama in some cases. They were tough on hackers, big on building the most innovative levels, and they really pushed this community forward. These days, however, it's become the exact opposite. It doesn't help that most of the Korean players of that age are now facing tough Korean school exams and can no longer fit GD time in, being under academic pressure we can't even begin to understand. But who is left? Well, it's the two biggest channels in the GD's Korean community's history, Partition Zion and Dorami. I wouldn't go as far to say that these guys killed the community, far from it, but their behaviour and free reign in the recent updates has been completely destructive and counterproductive to everything the half-decent Korean players were doing. Let's first start with Partition. Now, Partition is a weird one. He's had a complete role reversal lately. He used to be a proper veteran of the game, running GW and contributing to the game's future, but he's now one of the fastest growing and most successful channels in GD history, sacrificing any meaningful contribution to the game in favour of farming and sometimes misleading content. The guy is nice, and I'd say he's probably a bit less calculated when it comes to deliberate farming than the likes of Mika. However, we eventually need to look past his innocence. He's never once listened to any piece of justified criticism in the name of common decency. In summer last year, I made a video, not a rant video, just a respectful video voicing my concerns that Partition was completely aware that he was stealing content, misleading viewers, and generally running some shady schemes below radar to grow faster. I enlisted this video a while back, but even in the time it was up, clocking over 40,000 views, it changed nothing. Partition still makes very reaching clickbaiting videos with a lot less content than is alluded to within the title. A lot of his videos are very similar, and he runs GD content a bit like a business now. As nice and harmless as he is, Partition has gone to some lengths to cover up stealing other people's video ideas, and he then laid low for a few months to cover up the evidence and wait for it to blow over before returning to do very similar things. The guy knows exactly what he's doing, and in all honesty, even if he gets a lot of levels rated, I think making him a moderator was a very bad idea and a signal from RobTop that it's more about your social media presence in GD than it is your critical analysis of rate-worthy levels. He's not going to stop, and I think it's a real shame how much he controls now. For all the fairly rubbish and boring content he puts out, it sets a precedent for and incentivises really bad content, and hence all of the hundreds of thousands of people that look up to him will not ever strive to make anything interesting when imitating him. He has discovered the GD definition of a quick fix for views, retaining none of the integrity he used to have when he was a key player in GW. Someone else guilty of this is Dorami, another one who came across as nice, but is having just as much of a pervasive negative impact on the community and the game, if not more given how much more emotion he pours into it. I've been criticised for making this point before, mainly because I chose to do it over one of the best levels of the update, being Idols, to fight over, but Dorami's Demons List input is bad, and he is slowly invalidating the Demons List by flooding it with below par, incomplete, boring and lazy levels that use difficulty to be interesting. This wouldn't necessarily be something worthy of criticism if not for one thing. Dorami has an unhealthy obsession with his brand, and in a sense his ego. Let's take a recent level he verified, Crumulent. Now let me ask you something. What's the first thing that should be in the verification video's title if not to be in no way self-promoting or clickbaity? The name of the level? The creator? Well, not in this case. In almost all of Dorami's verification videos, he starts off the title by telling you that he's verified something. Extreme verification by Dorami gives no credit to the creators of the level he is playing, but these sensationalist titles, he's recruiting more impressionable viewers into the Dorami cult by promoting his ego through his content. With this in mind, it is my belief that he only floods the list with these demons so he can upload the video appealing to his brand and so he can gain thousands of subs and hundreds of thousands of monetized views. I doubt Durrami cares about the demons list. I think his interest stops when the overly dramatic verification video has been published. Durrami commercialises GD in a way I've not seen from a reputable, admired and respected player since Guitar Hero Styles was at his worst stage. It's not healthy for the game or his fans. He comes across to me as extremely self-centered when it comes to brand promotion, as evident from his titles and thumbnails. In very early 2.0, when he had around 30,000 subs, I actually used to be a big fan of him. But then, and I presume this happened when he started making good money, as anywhere between 30 to 50,000 subs is where the ad revenue starts to spike, his content just took a complete nosedive, and he has almost taken the Korean community with it. And thus, the marvellous contribution to the Korean community once made now lies dead in the water in the face of financial opportunity, with all but those two running a monopoly. It's sad, really. Alright, so I think that'll do it. I've ranted enough about what I perceive to be the biggest threats to the community and the waning game, and this has been the ultimate dosage of community commentary from me. I know this has been incredibly controversial, but I know that there is a reason for why I'm doing this. I loved this game once. It was my complete life at one point. During my time in the community, I've been very active and involved in more or less a daily basis. I got into a lot of drama, and this game overall consumed my channel's activities, even when I had a view to do more space and conspiracy stuff. But only now, when I've taken a step back and had less time and been less involved, do I understand why it's no longer revocable. I don't hate channels bigger than myself because I'm jealous or because of money or anything. It has nothing to do with that. I make the stands that I do because I was once playing this great game in a great community that was lost because too many others became obsessed with those things. Oftentimes, when I'm with my friends at home or work, they ask me how my channel became as large as it did, and I'm forced to tell them how. The words Geometry Dash don't really do the game justice. Most people know of the Impossible game, but GD isn't about blocks and jumping. People usually think it's some kind of maths game. In fact, GD is incredibly diverse. Even if the name is cringy and the player base is naive and decreasing, GD still has a lot to offer. It is one of the most advanced mobile games in app history with a fantastic editor. It has gone from blocks and flat colours to some absolutely astounding artistic capabilities, and one of the best soundtracks available for a rhythm game, and probably the best of any inherently mobile indie game ever to have existed, thanks to Newgrounds. And it genuinely has the potential for so much enjoyment. However, the game has aged badly, and the new hooks the developer is adding aren't helpful or interesting. The game isn't dead yet, but it's completely lost its way, and so have we. I used to enjoy making theatrical narrative videos on my favourite crappy 2D platformer when the community was thriving. Now I find it much more cringy and I don't want to do it anymore, barring some form of miracle within the game. I'll still make G-News and the occasional GD video, but GD in general is winding down and I don't think there's anything stopping it now. I hope, whether you're a fan or an enemy, that you take on board what I've said, because never before have I been so open about my biggest problems and perceptions within the game, and it seems appropriate to voice them in the final episode of Community Commentary. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'll see you all another time.